What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another meta update. My name is Joshua Joshi Howard, and just like awkward high schoolers, we're going to be generous with what we're calling dates right now. It is no longer August 3rd. I've been in Australia for the past week, and my body is still not entirely sure what time zone it is in. So, it might be Wednesday by the time you get this. You'll have to forgive me. Anyway, let's go ahead and start talking about it. We do have this. We're still seeing like relatively low numbers of guard players. Overall, we only had like 30 something, despite the fact that there were several rather large events coming out this weekend. We were up to a 44.5% win rate, but it was also a relatively high average elo compared to what it's been for quite a while, actually. It was not even this high during like peak Grizzled for a while. So, it's doing all right. Steelhammer also has been very, very popular. It's been accounting for roughly 40% of this week's player count, and I think about 30% overall for the new July patch. But let's go ahead and give you some quick data. Other interesting stuff, we are seeing that Siege is doing rather well. Bridgehead and Mech are both doing rather well, but relatively small sample sizes here for Mech and Siege. The big one, of course, is Bridgehead. I think a lot of people were kind of expecting this one to be pretty darn good when it came out, and now that it can attach to combined, we are seeing it doing a little bit better there. But in general, overall, things are still looking fairly standard. Steel being at nearly 50% is pretty exciting. But the other big thing is we are still seeing that Purge is like not really our best disposition. We can do it, but it's okay. The biggest thing is that we really struggle in a lot of the Purge mirrors, and we also really struggle in the priority assets um, matchup when we are playing Purge ourselves. So it is not necessarily a great thing for us to do. Recon has been consistently performing rather well for us for a while, and priority assets doing pretty good again. One of the big things about this, of course, is the fact that a lot of factions and detachments got moved off of Purge the Foe, and now priority assets is the one that is the most common by a significant margin. I think in terms of what you're actually seeing played in general singles events, we're pretty darn good at the priority assets mirror in particular because we are very, very easily able to score 100 points or max out our primary a lot of the time. But we can also have a little bit of tools to try and deny our opponent from doing the same back to us. We're pretty darn good at that. Over 50% is exciting. There's also a little bit more details about the combination of certain detachments. If you're interested in that on the right, let's go ahead and get into it. It's a relatively short video overall, so let's go ahead and get our first list. The first one is a list by Calvin Fertig going 5-1 at the Denver 40K Fight Club. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, when I saw this list, I was like, oh my god, what year is it? This looks incredibly similar in a lot of ways to lists that I was playing 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. It's a Cadian command squad with Ursula creating 10 Cadians, a Sion command squad with 10 Scions, solo commissar, solo Gaunt's Ghost, a Rogothorn commander with a grand strategist enhancement, 2 units of 6 Bulgrin, 3 units of Kazarkin, and 2 Luminous battle tanks. This is basically everything that was super, super popular in after the era of indirect that we just had going on all the time, where we were running a bunch of Bulgrin, we were running a bunch of Kazarkin, and the Rogothorn Commander, and the 2 Lemurs battle tanks, and of course a Scion Brick. And then after that, you just kind of have some stuff. This is a bit of an interesting list, as one of the first things that we look at is what are we spending the reinforcements stratagem on? The obvious thing is like the 10 Scions. There are a couple of like it's a little bit unclear how exactly that works and whether or not you get 10 signs back or if you get 14. I'm definitely leaning towards you only get 10 signs back, but the other opportunity here is you can use it on the Kazarkin, which is still, as always, a pretty good unit, and it helps out quite a bit with the medium unit count in this list. It is important to note here that Calvin did lose the first round, and actually every single one of his opponents, except for his round 6, ended up going 3-3, which was very entertaining. Yeah, I mean this is an interesting list. The Bulgrin do force your opponent to come out and play a little bit faster than they perhaps want to, and then the Kazarkin, of course, they are not as good as they used to be. They are a little bit cheaper than they have been in the past, but this list does everything okay. One of the things that I do like about this list is it does give you a bit more ability to outplay your opponent in ways that you weren't necessarily always able to do before, or at least some of the other lists that we've been seeing over the past couple of weeks. There's a little bit more play to this than we have in some other lists, and so even though this might have a couple matchups where it's not necessarily going to just be crushing them. you can just be the better player with this list, which is something that I do like about it. It also just looks very nostalgic to me. Next, we have Clifton Russell going 5-1 at the Lone Star Open, and this is the opposite. It is a very unsubtle list. Steel Hammer plus Designation Force being played in Purge the Foe. Clifton Russell has a Bane Hammer, that was a character, a Bane Sword, it's been turned into a character with a Battalion Commander, God's Ghost, Lord Solar, a Shadow Sword that has been turned into a character, a Storm Sword that's been turned into a character, and 3 Engine Seers, and that is the entire list. Now, one of the things that does make this list a little bit more interesting now than it has been in the past. It is just 4 super heavies, so it's not a very subtle list. However, one of the things that it does have going for it right now is the Purge the Foe mission versus priority assets is really good if you can just park big units on the middle objectives because your opponent has to come to them. They are trying to, I say stack poker chips on the middle objectives and then hold them. And if you're like, well, here's 16 OC of toughness 13, that can be more if I need it to be on my turn, and you try and charge me or whatever, and I shoot you immediately afterwards, it becomes not every army can do that. Not every army can deal with that. And if you stop them from putting like one of those poker chips that stop them from doing the action relatively early on, it becomes very difficult for them to max out their primary. If you can do that twice, you are very quickly getting to a position where they aren't necessarily maxing, whereas you can just by basically just killing them. So while this isn't the most um, subtle list, it's not the list that's going to have the highest skill expression in it. It is going to be standing still quite often and then shooting guns straight down. um, I do think it's actually reasonably well positioned for the priority assets. I'm also a little bit surprised that of all the armies that Clifton beat, it was Custodes that was able to beat him. I do wonder if the Custodes player just like decided, hey, we're going to be taking some long bomb charges. Maybe they did an Unleashed the Lions in there and just had a bunch of individual Alaris custodians able to do actions, something like that. And I'm also a little bit surprised that none of the Dark Angels armies were able to deal with this because there's a lot of anti-vehicle in the Deathwing Knights maces. The Lion can reasonably pick up a super heavy by himself you know if things go a little bit well for them. And then of course Dark Angels are able to bring a fair amount of like anti-tank in general, but I guess it's not something that they were able to do. Either way, maybe there's simply too much tank here. But Clifton Russell ends up going 5-1 after beating Dark Angels 3 times this weekend. I have one more list to show you guys. This one normally doesn't pass the criteria that I have for myself, but it is me, number one, and two. I only have 2 other lists to show you guys. So I'm like, we can have a little bit more as a treat. I will have a video coming up on the next couple of days talking about this, but I believe tomorrow I'm going to try and get out a list with my thoughts on the WTC lists and all the good stuff that is going on in there. So I went to OBSEC Presents Western Australia Team Championship over in Perth, Australia. Wow, that's very far. Yes, I'm very tired. I am still trying to figure out what time zone it is, and we will see what my body does with that. Um, for this one, I'm not super happy with my list overall. A couple things in mind. One, I was told, hey, you need to be able to play priority assets, and you need to be able to play up against like orcs in particular. But a couple of things that does come up with this is one, it is really difficult for my army to, I call it can open, right? It is very difficult for me to kill a transport and then kill the things inside, or even to like move block the things inside. It becomes very difficult for me to do that. And then the other big thing is I just can't kill high toughness things, right? I'm not really able to deal with knights. I'm not really able to deal with land raiders. I'm not really able to deal with, I told my team like if you pair me into Fulgrim, I will just lose. I just cannot kill that model. I cannot kill the Winged Demon Princes. So there's a lot of stuff that I felt I was not really able to deal with. And the reason why I'm not just playing like the Nemo Tucker list, the Siege plus whatever with a bunch of Las cannons, is mostly because one, I hate that list. It is not fun for me. And I do want to make it very clear. I do not find that list fun. But it is a good list, and it does not have these kind of problems. And instead, I was like, hey, let's put a bunch of chimeras with Kazarkin inside, do some of that skirmishing. But the skirmishing power here was not as strong as I wanted it to be. Again, I'll talk more about this in a couple of days. But I had 10 Scions with volley guns, Cadian Brick with Stalwart's Honors, Scion Brick with Meltas, Gaunt's Ghost, Nork Deadhog, and Ursula Creed. Nork Deadhog, fun thing is because he, along with things like Crypto Thralls or What are other examples? Eldar support weapons attach at the declare battle formation step, which means that Nork can go with the Scions, he can go with the Cadians if he needs to, and basically he would go with the Cadians unless I was starting a sign brick on the board. If I was starting a sign brick on the board, then he would go with the Scions for the reroll wounds. And then the fact that he doesn't affect their deep strike. Two chimeras with flamers, two Cadian recons, one unit of Catachan Lance Cannon. I really, really wanted this to be something else in list building, but I was like, fine, this is a perfect spot for it, and I didn't feel like anything else was super useful. It was okay. It was a totally fine addition to it. Two units of Kazakhan, two units of 5 Krieg Engineers, two units of Aquilons. I loved Aquilons. I think they're super, super cool. And they were, they were good, not they were not great, but they were good, is how I would describe them. And then two Scout Sentinels for the reroll ones. They don't actually affect Bring It Down, but I had the two Chimeras, which were Bring It Down targets. But they also tended to die almost immediately, so it is what it is. I did not have a great weekend. Again, I'll talk about this more later, but I drew against Custodes, small loss into Orcs, bigger loss into Votan, a expected loss into Knights, and then a draw into Custodes. Overall, had a good time. Really got to have a blast hanging out with the guys in Australia. Got to meet a couple guys from the Discord in Sydney. Got to meet a couple guys from the Discord in Australia as well. So it was a pleasure meeting all of you guys, and hopefully the fact that I was jet lag the entire time did not mean too much. Again, more information will be coming about this in the next couple of days. I'll have a video on that. I also have another Teams event coming up in Portland next weekend. So it's in like 4 days, and I have some hobbying that I need to do for that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of the Meta Update. See you guys all next time. Bye bye.